welcome back to DC SportsTalk Xtra. And today we've got a packed episode that's all about change, challenge, and honestly a lot of chaos in DC sports. I'm your host, Jack Morrison, and today we'll start over on the baseball diamond where Paul Toboni is now the new head of baseball operations for the Washington Nationals. We'll break down who he is, what he brings, and what this Nationals reboot is all about. Then we'll switch gears over to the gridiron where the Commanders are nursing some serious injuries. That's Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, both out against the Falcons, and that leaves DC fans saying, well, that escalated quickly. We will talk about the ripple effects, the replacements, and whether this game is already lost before kickoff. Let's get into it. So first off, who is Paul Toboni? If you're not a hardcore, front office junkie, you might not know the name, and there's a pretty good chance you don't if you haven't heard his name on a headline for the past few days. But he's just 35 years old, making him the youngest executive in baseball right now. He has been with the Boston Red Sox since basically forever. He climbed from intern to assistant general manager. His specialty is scouting and player development. This is not just my opinion. This is what he said himself. He was the director of amateur scouting, then vice president of player development, and then the assistant general manager over in Boston. Now, he's in DC, hired as president of baseball operations. Translation, he's the new boss, and everybody else in the front office answers to him. Basically, he's got Boston brains, and now he's running Washington's baseball. Or at least he's supposed to be. This is DC after all, where baseball plans go to die or get traded for a relief pitcher. But, let's be clear, this is not an easy job. Paul Toboni is inheriting a Nationals organization that's been a hot mess. They will not be a hot mess if he does his job right, but as of lately, they have been. And first off, we've got some farm system problems. Obviously, a lot of promising names. Eli Willits, Harlan Suzana, and a lot of these new guys that are being called up. You've got Travis Sikora, who's well on his way to the big leagues. But what about after that? It's thinner than a DC crowd at rush hour when the Metro's delayed. It's insane. There's also that organizational identity crisis. You've got Mike Rizzo, whose long tenure ended abruptly in July. Dave Martinez is gone. Fans aren't sure, and they weren't sure for a while, who the Nationals were supposed to be anymore. Are they a rebuilding team? Are we a win-now team? Or a team that just cashes checks from that 2019 World Series DVD sales? What's going on? But then you've got some optimism. You've got Miguel Cairo, the interim manager right now. But the question is, do we stick with him, or is Toboni going to find somebody permanent? A manager who can handle a rebuild, develop these young kids in the farm system, and also deal with the pressure of a fan base that's running out of patience. That is not easy. Let's not forget that the Nats, they're stuck in a division with the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies. That's like showing up to a group project with 3 overachievers while you forgot your pencil. What are you doing? But the optimistic version is that Toboni brings in his Boston scouting chops. And here's the deal. Paul Toboni, this guy is good. He developed and drafted, you ready for this? This is unbelievable. Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Connolly Early, Christian Campbell, Brian Bayo, Bobby Miller, and Kyle Teal. That is unreal. Those are some of, and they've all been one of the top prospects in the MLB. And when you look at what Meyer and Campbell and Roman Anthony are doing at the big league level right now, that's unbelievable. And he, with that scouting chops, he can rebuild the farm system, making smart trades, and he will build a real Washington pipeline. And suddenly, Nats have young pitchers throwing gas, a farm system that you can brag about, and a clear plan that. Now, they had a plan, and it's becoming clearer, but Paul Toboni can make that plan even more vivid. In 3 years, we could see them sneaking into a wild card. In 5, maybe the words Nationals and contenders are said in the same sentence without irony. But then, of course, there's the darker side. Toboni can flame out fast if he tries to do too much too soon. If he signs washed-up vets on big contracts, if ownership meddles, if prospects don't pan out, then it's just another catastrophe. Nobody wants that. And look, I'm not saying Toboni has all the answers for the Nationals, but if he can nationalize a winning strategy, he will be a DC hero. But if not, let's hope we don't get another rebuild so long that it turns into a rebore. That's just, I mean, Toboni, he's got a lot of experience, again, working his way up from intern to the general manager position. Like, that is not something that just anybody can do. And Paul Toboni, he's one of the best assistant GMs that are in the league as the Boston assistant GM. And again, look, that list of players is insane, right? You've got Roman Anthony, Kyle Teal, Marcelo Meyer. These guys are all incredible. And he worked really hard to integrate that player development with player acquisition in Boston. Going to be a huge loss for the Boston Red Sox. And he is a masterclass in acquiring just the best player development minds that are out there. Nationals got a good one. And one thing I saw from an article in Federal Baseball, he clearly thinks, this is a direct quote, he clearly thinks about how each player will fit in the organization. One thing that he talked about that really is interesting is developable traits. That's interesting, and that's not something, like, we don't really look, nowadays we just look for the 5 tool guys, but really we only look for a few of them, power and speed, and hitting for average, that's kind of dissipated in the modern baseball game, but looking for those developable traits, like, an example about that is how he spoke with Christian Campbell. He took him from a slap-hitting leadoff man to a player with much more power, and Toboni and the Red Sox saw how Campbell moved and the athleticism that he had, and they thought they could build on what he already had. He's a great athlete, and the fact that he went from hitting top of the lineup, like the very top in the minor leagues, now he's a solid 3-4 hitter that can really put a lot of power. He had great plate discipline in college, and the Red Sox thought that can come, that power, it can come in their development system. And let's look at Campbell's stats in the last year of college. He only hit 4 homers, but in his first year in the minors, he hit 20. Now that is the kind of stuff that Paul Toboni can bring to the Nationals. And he does like talking about C.J. Abrams in his first interview as a National. He spoke about C.J. Abrams to make a larger point. He said, well, while the Red Sox didn't draft Abrams, obviously, Toboni saw him a lot because Abrams was at all of those showcase events. And Toboni's point was seeing a player seeing a player perform over and over is very important. If Toboni saw Abrams if he saw one of his teammates and he was just as good as or better for one viewing, you can't put him above Abrams because CJ showed that he could dominate that competition for years. Now, the Nats will go for the shiny new toy with late helium over a guy with a longer track record. And an example of that is last year's draft. Seaver King and Luke Dickerson were 2 players that they took in the first and second round with shorter track records. Based on this interview that we saw when he talked about Abrams, that kind of stuff will not happen with Toboni. He needs a guy that can be able to, he's a guy that will be able to bring the Nationals talent and just good baseball. Might be in the long term. It might not be something that fans are willing to wait for, but it has happened. And the Red Sox, people thought they were going to be waiting for a while, and now they're in the mix. The Red Sox are legitimate contenders in the postseason. And the fact that he's 35 years old, and there are only 30 jobs of general manager for a Major League Baseball team, that him getting one of them at such a young age, that shows just how impressive of a general manager and as a person, as a leader, that he can be. And his strength is the farm system. His strength is development. And if he can continue that, like, again, and I'm going to keep coming back to this list, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Connolly Early, Christian Campbell, and Kyle Teal, and Brian Bayo and Bobby Miller, two pitchers, all of those guys have really become either parts of that young Red Sox core or have been used as key trade pieces. Obviously, Kyle Teal now making waves over with the White Sox and the Royals after having been drafted by Boston. He is, according to Jeff Passan, he is an A-plus hire, just what the Nationals needed. And he is going to be the head of baseball operations. It has not been said yet if he will be the GM, but it is more than likely that he will be. For me, it's hard to imagine that he won't. Over with the Red Sox, he assumed the position of both the vice president of baseball operations and the assistant general manager. So I would not be surprised. Obviously, you had Mike Rizzo, who would he did both of those jobs. Took the job of general manager first, and then became the president of baseball operations. I think Toboni will do the same, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. And as for his right hand man, that's been a lot of point of discussion since the hire. He is. We've talked about that right hand man, and I think the man for that job is Mike DeBartolo, who's been a great leader over at the GM position since July, taking Eli Willett's first overall, which I really like that pick. I saw him play, and it's just he's a great baseball player. Got a lot of contact, and he can hit. He's great. And it's going to change a lot in the clubhouse as well. Obviously, DeBartolo has been here a long time, and Rizzo was well into his 60s. But now, Toboni, again, 35, that youth is going to make him more exposed to new ideas, the new wave of baseball analytics that we keep on seeing. And again, he comes from that scouting background, but values those analytics heavily and integrates them into his process. And Toboni he's spoken at length about how drafting and player development need to be merged in a lot of ways. You need to draft a player with an idea of how to make them better. It's what he did with Christian Campbell. It's what the Nationals really haven't shown that they're able to do. And I think Toboni is going to be one of those guys that makes those changes in the farm system. Now, they're not going to be huge, broad, sweeping changes because those don't work overnight. But the small ones, it's going to show the type of leader he is, and it's going to show the fans of the Washington Nationals what he will bring. And again, that I'm going to keep coming back to this list because the talent is just unbelievable. That scouting department from 2019 to 2022, which he ran with the Boston Red Sox, he drafted. Where'd my list go? Okay, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer, Connolly Early, Brian Bayo, Christian Campbell, Kyle Teal, Bobby Miller. I mean, what else are you going to say? Bobby Miller has inserted him into the Dodgers rotation after they used him as a great trade piece. They have inserted, they've used him. Brian Bayo has been a force in that Red Sox rotation, obviously with the way that Roman Anthony and Meyer are producing at the top level along with Campbell, and what Kyle Teal's been over to do and other teams in the AL. This guy really knows what he's doing, and I could not be more excited for what he's going to bring to the Washington Nationals baseball in the future. And it's for a Nationals team that, of course, this was reported on by Jeff Passan. He says, quote, "For a Nationals team in need of a serious infusion of talent, it's worth noting that Paul Toboni ran the draft for Boston when they chose those prospects that I just listed." So I think Paul Toboni, great hire, and I think that's just it's going to turn so much around for the Washington Nationals. Again, not saying he's got all the answers, but he will create a better environment in the clubhouse that just wasn't there in July. It led to the firings of those other two, Rizzo and Martinez, and now Paul Toboni. New era in Washington. Very excited. Let's switch over to the football side of things. The Commanders have problems. Jaden Daniels out with a knee injury. Terry McLaurin out with a quad injury. Starting quarterback and wide receiver one, both sidelines. If you're a Falcons fan, you are grinning. If you're a Commanders fan, you are groaning. I mean, let's put it this way. Daniels is the shiny new Ferrari. Okay, let's put it that way. Daniels is a shiny new Ferrari race car. Terry McLaurin, the reliable steering wheel. And without both of them, you're trying to race a scooter in Formula One. Not going to work. So, Marcus Mariota will get the start, facing his old team in Atlanta. Talk about that narrative. And if this were a movie, Mariota would throw 4 touchdowns, beat his old team, and ride into the sunset. But this is real life. Real life is usually 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a lot of checkdowns. But Mariota, in his starts the past few years as a backup to Jaden Daniels, he is 4-0. Granted, not against great teams. The Panthers twice, last week the Raiders, and before that the Dallas Cowboys. But Marcus Mariota was a starter in this league for a while, and the fact that he's still able to produce with with that offense that did have a lot of injuries as well last week, it's definitely going to show something as to his production level. And I think Mariota, despite the fact that he obviously took first team reps last week and had a great game, that offense is still going to lose some timing. Daniels and McLaurin had great chemistry. Mariota, he's been practicing with the reserve team. Chemistry experiments are not quite the same. Then you've got the playbook. That's shrinking. Expect more screens, slants, short passes, and a heavy dose of the run game. Now, that's not a problem. I mean, Mariota himself, he can run. Obviously, I love the running back core. I've spoken about that way too much in previous episodes. But Ron Rivera more than likely is writing 3 yards and a cloud of dust on the whiteboard in the Commanders' locker room. The defense has got to step up. Washington cannot win a shootout without its stars. The defense has got to force turnovers and give Mariota short fields. The Falcons will test everything. Expect those blitzes from that strong inside defensive line that's particularly strong in Atlanta. Expect the press coverage and expect Atlanta to say, hey, Marcus, prove that you can beat us. Because he has proved he can beat the bad teams. But can he beat, obviously, and the Falcons obviously are not considered a contender. They are not considered a good football team. But they're going to come out with a lot of confidence because the 2 best players on the Washington Commanders team are now injured. So the key questions going into this game, who's going to step up at wide receiver? Mariota does not like to throw a deep ball. Who's the deep ball man? It's, obviously McLaurin. He's not there. Noah Brown, injured. He's got a quad injury. So who's going to step up at the wide receiver position? One man who I think is going to do well, that's De'Ami Brown, who is unbelievably good at running slants. And that's what's going to happen a lot of the time. And I think Marcus Mariota can really, he can exploit that young weapon that they've got. Second question is going to be, how steady is Marcus Mariota in the pocket? He doesn't need a great pocket. He can run. He's old, but he can still run. And that he showed against the Raiders. He showed it last year. But against a really tight inside defensive line that the Falcons will bring, can he manage to create throwing opportunities with a lot of pressure? Which leads directly into the next question. Can the O-line hold? The O-line has been better than was expected going into the season. There was not a lot of hope around Josh Connerly Jr. over in training camp. There were a lot of questions as to whether or not he would get the starting job. He did and has kept it. But is that going to be able to hold against the big physical guys, Calais Campbell, highlighting that? And it's going to be a very big test for that offensive line. Is the run game going to keep them balanced? Obviously, you've got Krosky, Merritt, Rodriguez, Eckler, these guys who I love. And obviously, Eckler's injured, so he won't get a lot of carries. But you've got McNichols, ran for 65 yards and a touchdown. Ran for a 65-yard touchdown and 100 yards in total last week. And obviously, Krosky, Merritt, and Rodriguez. This is a great running back core. And if that can keep them balanced between the short passing game and the running backs, then that's going to be a good thing for the Washington offense. You don't have nearly as much options without Jaden Daniels, but the fact that they still have as many as they do without him, that says a lot about Mariota. It says a lot about the front office and how they've built this team. And it just says a lot about Dan Quinn, and what he can do with this Commanders offense. The Falcons are not a juggernaut, but you're walking in without two of your biggest weapons. You're playing poker without a queen or an ace. You can win, but you have to be Commanders are in a tough spot. Without McLaurin, the passing attack without McLaurin is just McLame. Without Daniels, you're denied before kickoff. And if Washington is able to find a way to win, and I won't be surprised if they do. They will. They have options, and my prediction, I think Washington still ends up winning this game. But it's going to be an interesting one to watch how Dan Quinn is able to integrate the new offense without Daniels and McLaurin. So finally, Paul Toboni, the new architect of the Washington Nationals, and we will see what he can continue to do after the incredible stint in Boston. He's young, he's smart, but the rebuild won't be quick. Best case scenario, this becomes the start of something new. Worst case, it's another rerun of the last 5 years, not including that World Series win. The Commanders, meanwhile, head into Atlanta without their QB1 and wide receiver 1. Mariota's got experience, but the game plan has got to change, and the defense has to carry extra weight. In short, new beginnings in the baseball diamond, bad bruises on the football field. Welcome to life as a DC sports fan. Well, alrighty, again, some predictions. Give Paul Toboni time. Don't expect miracles by 2026. But by 2027, maybe you've got something cooking. And for Sunday, I'll say Washington is going to keep it close, but they still pull away to win it. 24-20. I think the Washington Commanders will take that game over the Atlanta Falcons. Thank you so much for tuning in to DC SportsTalk Xtra. Thank you for listening, for writing out those puns. And remember, in DC Sports, when it rains, it pours, and sometimes it Toboni storms. Okay, I'm sorry, that one was just terrible. We'll catch you next time on DC SportsTalk Xtra. Once again, I'm Jack Morrison. Thank you so much for tuning in.